All right. Good to see everybody this morning. Thanks for joining. This is our 7th Alien Worlds Governance Meetup, practicing fractal governance. And we're excited that the Alien Worlds is based around governance. And at some point, we're looking forward to them releasing their next set of abilities to elect leaders to planets. And we really feel that this fractal governance could play an interesting part in either helping those delegates with transparency and kind of like a weekly meeting, so we can introduce this fractal governance. And the main difference that we're using with fractal governance is obviously everyone comes to the meeting in person. When we get to the breakout rooms, please have your camera on. And what this is a practice in consensus making. So, a lot of different blockchains and different metaverses and games, your voting is based on how many tokens are in your wallet. And we've gone through that experiment with EOS and a couple different chains and a couple different DACs that we've been part of. And you felt disenfranchised the small token holder. You just feel that you don't have enough tokens to have a vote or a say. And for this one, I believe it's more equitable that we all come together, and it's up to us as a group to come to consensus. And for our agenda, our consensus that we're trying to come to is about who contributed. And it's been kind of fuzzy because our group is a little bit divided in people that are very active in alien worlds and people that are active in governance. So we've kind of put the challenge ahead of us that to be the pioneers to show metaverses and a wax blockchain what this fractal governance is all about, that we've been having to be a little bit nimble and agile to almost cater to two groups, groups that come from KROWN that are very focused on governance, and try and bridge it and create a portal over to alien worlds. So what it consists of is, the first thing that happens is we randomly go into breakout rooms. If you can ask for someone to be maybe a facilitator, someone to be a timekeeper, and we have about 3 or 4 minutes to explain what you're passionate about, why you're here, and then just let the group know what you've contributed, whether it's with alien worlds, maybe building some tools, participating in governance, maybe just playing the game, raising awareness, support, or what have you done in general around governance. And it is very valuable just to attend this meeting. So just being here to kind of audit the process and go through, that's enough. So if you're new to the process, don't worry if you haven't have a huge amount to share of what you've done last week. Participating in this meeting is valuable enough. After we do our introductions, maybe I'll just back up. If someone could in that room, when I get back to the main kind of Zoom here, allow you guys to record the breakout room session. So if someone could do that, it'd be great. Kind of like transparency, and we'll post the videos after the session. But after your introduction, it's going to last for about 20-25 minutes. We have about half an hour then to come to consensus. And there's a few ways that we've managed that. I find one way, instead of someone leading and voicing their opinion on who they view as the biggest contributor, is that sometimes we do a countdown where everyone puts the top contributor in their chat box. We do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then everyone posts who they believe contributed the most in the last week. And if there's a consensus, 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 6, great, you move on to the second person and kind of repeat that process. But if you don't have a consensus, then it comes to, just talking with each other, asking each other why you voted that way, and trying to achieve a consensus in the group. At the very end, when we come out of the breakout rooms, I'll just ask you to list the names from top to bottom. Everyone seems to, I believe, and Saber, I have your wax address. Thank you very much. I believe I have everyone's wax address, so we can keep the list from highest contribution to lowest, just kind of in a row. We don't need to post the wax addresses for this exercise. And then we'll come back to the main room, have a little bit of a discussion. And then we do continue the Zoom call for more of a main KROWN call where it's just open discussion. And we've been known sometimes to have marathon calls. So everyone's invited to join us for that. But yeah, does that make sense? We've kind of got a smaller group today. So we have 3, 6, 7. So that'll be interesting. 2 rooms of, small rooms. So it'll be a little bit more quality time to get to know each other. But yeah, any questions, concerns? All right, well, just give me a second then, and I'll allow you guys to record. And yeah, new experiment, guys. We've got mini rooms. For some of you that maybe weren't here last week, we did get the announcement last week that we got a grant from Alien Worlds for 100,000 trillium. So I'll kind of ramp up some of the marketing, and then Dan offered to join me in doing some interviews to kind of interview the people going up for leadership in Alien Worlds. And I think those 2 things hopefully will attract a lot more people. We can try and start growing into more than 3 rooms. I think our highest was about 14 people in 3 rooms. So that'll be the challenge for next week. But if there's no questions, I will find the breakout room button and do the breakout rooms. Let's go for about 55 minutes and we'll get back here does anybody have a hard stop, or does everyone have about an hour to spend? All good?
I do have a bit more of a hard stop this time, and being that we have a smaller room, I think we could probably afford to do it shorter.
Yeah, I agree. We can shoot for top of the hour and come back here in 45 minutes.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah. So maybe spend 20 minutes on introductions and 25 on consensus.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks, Dwayne.
Awesome, guys. All right. So 2 small rooms, have some fun. And, I guess if you have 20 minutes for introductions, everyone can spend a little bit more time getting to know each other. So enjoy, guys. Have some fun, and we'll see you back here at the top of the hour.
Cool. See you then.
Good day. Anybody? Jason's usually the best moderator.
Yeah.
Are you up for it?
Of course.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I can kind of keep time, give everyone maybe 5 minutes for kind of an intro and just kind of explaining our passions and what we've done last week with Alien Worlds and what we've done last week regarding governance. Does anyone want to kick it off? I can kick it off.
Yeah.
All right. So this last week for Alien Worlds, one of my main tasks was just getting caught up. I've been traveling a bit, so just getting caught up. Every week I send out NFTs to everybody and go through a process. I use extras backed by a website to back these NFTs with Trillium and with KROWN. So I'm just catching up on that. One other nice event that we've participated in is Eric's organized an event around governing the metaverse with Dr. Sharif. So that was another great event. And that's really my main contributions. I've kind of had my Alien Worlds thing up all the time. So I keep on mining. I have ships that are out on these Binance missions, but I'm honestly not putting any more staked Trillium out there because I'm thinking I'm going to need that liquid within maybe a month for the voting, however that happens. I'm not sure if the voting is going to be similar how they've set it up before, where you're staked to a planet. There's a chance that there'll be a different staking mechanism for voting. So I'm trying to just get all my Trillium liquid so that when voting opens up, I'm not staked on these longer Binance missions. And yeah, that's about it for just larger governance. I'm pretty passionate about this fractally process. So the Genesis fractally meeting is every Saturday at 1600 UTC, so 10 a.m. my time. And that group's really focused on spreading the mission of fractal governance. So it's, if you're passionate about, this type of governance, it's very interesting to listen to the main development team there, led by Dan Larimer. They've been promising some UIs and some more releases, and the community that's participating is really asking them the questions on timelines and when they're going to have their new blockchain launched. And their official wording was by the end of summer, but they wouldn't commit to when the end of summer is. So, but it's pretty interesting that blockchain is going to be live. They're pretty excited about learning from their past iterations, whether it's BitShares, Steam, or I guess Hive and EOS. So sounds like it's a quicker database, easier to create tokens, and that there's really no pre-mine. No one's getting any of their, I guess they call it respect tokens, unless you're participating in one of these governance sessions. So I kind of think this is, making history, us just being one of the first fractals trying this out, that we're actually in that kind of pre-mine and really experimenting with this. And yeah, just appreciate all you guys here to try out this experiment. And yeah, that's all I really got to say. I will pass it on. I've got Extra beside me here.
Well, thanks, Dwayne. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to turn on my video when we got into the room. But as Jason knows, there is nothing I am more passionate about than governance. It is why I get up in the morning. It is every moment of every day I spend in my life is about DAOs and governance.
I don't want to interrupt you, but Zoom has my Zoom has a little bullshit meter here, and it's kind of like flying high. I'm not sure why.
Dude, I think it broke.
You found the light. You found the light. You got passionate at the core of internalizing the decision-making process.
Anyway, so if is it Saber is that I pronounce your name? Am I doing it correctly? It's a running joke here in the group because every time I say I am agnostic or indifferent to governance, I always get voted down to the bottom. So I've flipped that script a little bit, and I did think about that, Jason and Dwayne, before we got on today, about how exactly I was going to, keep that joke running, but in a much more maybe beneficial way. It's there's that joke in The Simpsons, right? It's about ME, my enjoyment. Anyway, but as they know, because I know these guys well, I run a crypto protocol that does asset backing in general, but like Dwayne said, my partner and I built the system that he uses for other NFT backing. So basically anybody who has a wax collection or so forth, or an NFT collection on wax can back their tokens with other things. We generally focus on silver to create a real world bridge. Even though bridge these days isn't the best word to use, so I probably won't be using that again because bridges seem pretty weak. I mean, if you saw what happened with Nomad or Solana last week or so. So anyway, but just like similar to Dwayne, we got a similar approval for an Alien Worlds grant in order to build the system, or to apply our system, should I say, so that Alien Worlds NFT holders can back their Alien Worlds NFTs with other tokens. But unlike or atomic assets, like I said, backing those NFTs with hard assets, with silver to begin with, so that this argument that's made that NFTs aren't worth anything can kind of be dispelled, if you will, and it's up to the creators of the NFTs in order to choose what tokens they want to back and how much they want to back it for, and so forth. So anyway, we did a lot of promoting it and sharing it, as Eric described it last week, just the same way that Dwayne did. So that's kind of been the most impactful, I think. But also, like Dwayne, he and I were on the call together with Dr. Sharif on Monday, talking about kind of like how does this interact with the metaverse and all kinds of stuff, to attract kind of what we described as last week is kind of top of the funnel, to get more people involved in what this looks like. And you don't know what that trigger might be for those people to move down the trigger. What that trigger might be to move down the funnel. And so that's what we're doing to kind of help with the off and on ramps and so forth. But Jason and Dwayne have heard this a million times, so I'll leave it at that. And I'll turn it over to you.
Sorry? Oh,
I was going to turn it over to Saber. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
The pronunciation we use for my name
Is what?
Sabri. We use the pronunciation Sabri.
Sabre. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies. Yeah. That actually makes a lot more sense. Now you say that, Sabre makes a lot more sense. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay.
Saber, yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay, there is some of it goes back. It's fine. Everyone, it's. I'm very used to my name getting wrong.
As am I. I know that story. I know the reality of people not knowing how to pronounce my name. So Sabre, please go ahead.
Okay. I've just recently started playing Alien Worlds. I don't even remember how I started playing it. It just happened randomly. I think I was busy in the Wax, checking out all of the apps in Wax, and I was like, oh, look, Alien Worlds, this looks like a game. Let's check this out. And it was a game, and I'm a gamer by nature, so I was like, okay, let's try this out. Let's see what this is like. And then I saw some of the articles about Alien World being one of the top, or I think it's still top app game. Okay, let's join in on this, check this out. And then I read through some of the white paper things on the website. But I love to do my research on everything that I go into. I'll generally read through all the whole white paper, and then I'll consider, okay, is this good? Is it not good? What do I think of this point? Does it have any good tokenomics? Does it look like the people that's doing this is just greedy, or are they actually going to, or are they actually building something? And then when I saw that Alien Worlds has been around for a long, but relatively long, if you look at crypto, most things haven't been around for more than a year. So something that's been around for more than a year was cool. That was really cool. Okay. I didn't even know about EOS until I started playing Million on Mars. So I've only really recently also got into EOS. My main focus has been Polygon. Low gas fees, very efficient, not a high price token, so that's nice. Yeah, and then it was only after I started playing Alien Worlds that I realized that I actually have to stake a lot of wax. that was fun. Oh, I think I just started playing. I didn't have much wax take. I had about 15, maybe 20. And then 5 transactions in, I'm getting an error, not enough for the transaction. I was like, what did I do wrong? What is the problem? And then I was like, okay, where's the Discord? Where's the damn Discord? Eventually got the Discord, the Telegram, and then I spoke in the Discord. I think Ricky answered, Ricardo. I spoke to him. And then since then, I've been a lot in the Discord discussing with the people there. Sometimes Ricardo will be online and I'll talk to him, find out what's happening with Alien Worlds and all of the events that's going on. It's been a very interesting 2 weeks. I think it's about almost 2 weeks that I've been playing. So it's been very, how shall I say, I've been learning a lot. And every time I learn something, I try to use that information that I've just learned. So when a new player comes on board, then I'll immediately try to catch them up about what's happening, how things work. I think I remember there was one player that was like, he asked about the mining and he said he got soft banned, and then one of the mods told him it's because you're not mining enough or something like that. And then he was like, but I left it overnight for 12 hours. I was like, that's your problem, sir. That is your problem. You can't leave it. You have to mine and then you have to claim. You can't mine, wait 12 hours and then claim. That's why you got flagged. And then I discussed that with him. Eventually he understood what I meant, because I think there was some communication problem. It's not first language isn't English. I think it's Philippine. And then eventually I was like, okay, I understand. So that was cool. I think, and then asked about the governance thing also. I think this calls actually when Duane, I think, is that how I spell your name?
Yeah,
Pronounce your name.
Dwayne. Yeah.
When he mentioned about the governance thing of before, that knowing that was actually a TMSA governance and that there was something before is also cool. I didn't actually know that. I know that there's plans for governance for each planet, although I don't know, governance for games seems very difficult to implement. So I'm very curious about how this is going to go, and everything that's going on is now practically only really recently also just found out about that. Like, I think I joined the Genesis Fractally meeting the last on Saturday. I think it was Saturday, yeah. Saturday I joined in on that. No idea what I was getting myself into, but it was cool. Very glad I did because I was more prepared for this now. I think the way of going with Fractal is very interesting, and I think it's honestly most likely the best scenario of governance that I've come across at all, because like you said earlier, everything is so focused on staking, whether it's the blockchains or whether it's like any form of any app or game, whatever that says they're going to have governance. It's always about staking. How much money can you put in? How much money can you put in so you can have a say? Everything is just like that. And honestly, it's very frustrating because it kind of takes away the idea of blockchain. Like, I think about POS, proof of stake, and the only thing that comes to mind whenever I see POS is frustrating, annoying, unnecessary. It's like blockchain wasn't developed for people to just bring their money and then be like, okay, I'm going to take over here now because I have the most money. So I really like what what you guys are doing with Fractally. I think it's genius, really easy, especially with saying what you've done over the week and then reaching a consensus about who has, like, in that, who has had the most contribution, because that's actually going to give proper or shall I say, validity to the decisions being made, and who makes decisions and how those decisions come about. Because it's kind of like actually having a, what's the word? Like having a meeting, not in person, but still having that meeting. So that's concrete. It's something that's actually happening. I haven't really done anything, I would say. Haven't really contributed much. Most of what I can say if I've contributed was in the Discord, in the Alien Worlds Discord, where I've become very active. My Alien Worlds thing is always also open. Even now, I'm checking to see when my mining time is over, so that I can make sure that I mine on time and not waste time on that. But I'm always constantly, I think, as someone that's been a Discord manager, I've managed at least 3 Discords this year alone. I'm very used to being on Discord at least 9 hours a day, 9 hours plus a day. And I'm a programmer, so it's like I'm busy programming on the one side, but my Discord is always open. So whenever I'm taking a short break, when I need to think about something, I'll check Discord, do a reply, see if anyone's having problems. So sometimes the mods are a little slow, so I think I'm not sure what the mods are always up to though. So weird. Maybe they busy in the other Discord. Not sure. Maybe.
All right.
Oh, this is all super interesting, and I do not want to interrupt you, but I think we're a little over time. Is there anything else that's important that you wanted to mention?
No, okay. Sorry. My bad.
The way we do this,
totally...
that you have to nominate the next person.
Oh, okay. I think that would be you, because you're the only one that haven't spoken.
I'm the only one left.
Yeah,
so,
Jason.
We're in luck because I have a very short list because I didn't do anything this week, like at all. I mostly just mowed the lawn and picked the thistles and cared for the chickens. But I was marinating in the background. I was thinking about things, and I'm actually kind of pleased with some of the conclusions I've drawn around governance, around describing governance and describing motivation, human motivation, as the force that comes in the conflict when people have discussion about governance issues, when there's disagreement and they need to find consensus. I mean, people are motivated by all different things than each other, right? Two people are not motivated by the same thing as each other, but there's an undercurrent in the way that people feel. And there's an expression that says, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel when you were talking. And that Fractally presents an opportunity to put reason at the forefront of decision-making. As we had said several times before, when there's a disagreement and there's a governance topic that people need to decide together because the outcome of the decision will affect everybody, then on a contentious issue, the decision gets made by a contest of force. Whether there are people are using money as their instrument of force, or they're using they're withholding their participation as an instrument of force, or they're using their bargaining position aggressively. Whatever the bargaining position a person has, I mean, having money is one of the strong bargaining positions among a whole world of bargaining positions, where, I mean, anybody can typically throw a monkey wrench in the gears if you have a station in the world at all. So people need to get along. And I mean, we'll get into it probably in the aftermath of it, but while I did nothing for Alien Worlds, I did draw a pretty good conclusion about Machiavellian ethics and the ethic of breaking rules for the greater good, right? The Machiavellian philosophy, school of thought, says that in a time of high urgency, you should always, the ethically correct thing to do is to ignore the other rules and just do what you must do for the greater good. And that there's a subjective evaluation that people go through to say, when is the situation urgent enough to call for me to do something against the rules for the greater good. And the tangents that spins into, and the examples that come to light through that lens of looking at ethics, and ethics at the core of people's motivation for the way that they feel about themselves, the way they feel about others. It was pretty productive. I wanted to throw in one comment for extra about NFTs not being worthwhile, not being worth anything because they're not asset backed. I went to a garden store yesterday and I saw shelf after shelf after shelf of garden gnomes and little wreaths and sticks, decorative sticks. I'm not kidding. Fake plastic decorative sticks. Okay. And they had price tags on them that looked like $30, $35, $50. It's a garden gnome. It serves no function other than people appreciate it for its aesthetic and sentimental value. And look at the history of the collections industry. People collect stuff.
Sorry, Jason. I know we're going to do introductions and not just interrupt and so forth, but I have to say a few things. I have to make a few, and I'll make them very brief so we can move on to consensus. To your first point, is if you know who Jeff Koons is, who's a very famous, very well-known artist who makes very, very expensive art, right? And he manipulated that because he was a very rich stockbroker who got other stockbrokers to buy his art, which is why he started selling art for hundreds of millions of dollars, right? He has always said from the very beginning that his thesis was the piece of art is not the item you're looking at, not the painting, not the sculpture. The art is what the emotion evokes in you. And if that emotion is worth $100 million because it evokes that versus a $10 million painting, then that's why his paintings go for the way they do, right? Because the piece of paper is not the art, right? That's just a representation and a reference point for you to go back to the actual like feeling that you have. And the worst art is the art that makes you feel nothing. So when you look at art that sells for $50, $100, $10,000, whatever it is, the reason it sells for that is because it doesn't do anything to you. It doesn't make you feel anything. And so you have no motivation to spend, whether it's $100 or $10,000 or whatever, right? And that his art evokes so much emotion, which I think is a little bit of bullshit, but we can set that aside. I'm not sure how much emotion you need to spend $100 million on a sculpture of a balloon animal, but that's his entire thesis of why A, he does art, and B, why his paintings sell for so much, right? And to the other point, I wasn't trying to say that NFTs don't evoke that same emotion. Like if you believe that kind of paradigm, right, then the garden gnomes are evoking some emotion to you, right? And they have some value, right? And so this isn't to say that the NFTs don't evoke any value. And therefore, again, in this paradigm, which we can argue about whether the paradigm is true or not, but in this paradigm, they do have value because they do evoke an emotion, right? There are people who own, just like Kincaid's pieces, right? That own thousands of his paintings, right? And own thousands of gnomes, and it gives them joy, right? And who is anybody, the external person, even though I think Kincaid was a total hack, but going down this rabbit hole for a moment, who are you to say that this art doesn't evoke emotion or joy to the individual who owns it? And that's where they're putting value in, right? So I didn't mean to be flippant in my response about NFTs aren't worth anything, right?
That's the criticism. I know that you weren't speaking for your own opinion. I know that you were speaking from an externalized critic, and I've heard the noise too.
Yeah, and so that's what made me think of it, right? Is kind of how these combined, right? Is that, you know, like Jeff Koons makes, you know, has made billions of dollars creating art in this paradigm, as had Kincaid before he died, as has these known creators, right? So it's somewhat, and I know we move on, but the last thing I'll say is it's an elitist decision in a way, or it's a supplanting your values for their values. To say, like, how could you ever spend $100 million on a metal balloon animal? How could you ever spend $1 million on a Kincaid? How could you ever spend $1 million on a gnome, right? It's not you to decide. Like, it's the individual who takes joy from it or takes disgust from it in certain art, right? That they're the ones that's putting up their money. So for you to like kind of supplant your own value on that, I think is just inherently
Well, I agree.
disingenuous,
I
let's
agree.
put it
I
that
share
way.
your passion. I feel as though we're gonna have to save it for the crown call.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
not
this is more than I know our conversation was, but I just wanted to make those couple points because I always thought that, and I know Jeff, he's a good friend to my brother, that it was somewhat of a like justification for why he sold this stupid sculpture for $100 million.
You don't have to explain it to anybody.
But exactly at the same time, it's like the person who spent the $100 million clearly like, didn't give a fuck about what we think, right? I mean, like, anyway, let's move on. So,
Since we've all given our introductions now, format that we've used in the past that seems to move us through the rank order of the fastest is if we all write in the chat the name of the person we feel should be given level 6, which is the top prize for the greatest contribution this week to Alien Worlds and to governance among the 4 of us, right? So we'll open up the chat. Everybody type in the name.
we're voting for ourselves, not to gild the lily, but we're voting for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
This week, I think that we should vote for ourselves in whatever place we feel we belong, rightfully, right? Just because it's simpler that way. So if everyone's got the chat open, does anybody need more time to write the name of the person? Hearing none, I'll give a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and press send. Okay.
All right.
So
We got a tie.
We have a tie. Split vote between Dwayne and Extra. Since Dwayne and Extra both voted for themselves, let's get them to refrain, or let's see if either of them will flip first. If either of them wants to pass it up. Do you think that maybe you're passing it?
I would concede seeing how Extra changed his whole persona and his heart and is now totally in love and passionate about governance. That was a big statement to put on the record. So I think just knowing the conviction there, I'm willing to honor that sentiment, and I would change it over to Extra. And a little bit more honestly, I used their tool this morning. It works flawlessly, and I couldn't do my job without it. So there you go.
Well, the reason I voted for Extra is because he's overdue. He deserves his recognition and his respect for the contribution that he added, which even though it doesn't reach like the fringe to be construed as the top of the funnel, it is the magnet at the bottom of the funnel that makes the top interesting at all in a way. And that there's so much value in that, the way it keeps getting used and the way that it keeps getting spread. And of course, I mean, the newfound passion for governance, that is the game changer.
If I could make a quick comment, not to self promote, because I know that's technically not what we're here for. Part of the reason I voted for myself was last week, and Dwayne, I think, and Jason, I think you know this, is that Eric made a big point about wanting to vote for Dwayne because he had gotten the grant and he had shared it and so forth, right? And I never talked about and it was my own fault. I'm not going to blame anybody else, right? I didn't articulate that as well as Dwayne did, and so I thought that sharing argument about how to get to the top of the list, like Eric articulated last week, was certainly the main driver for me than it is, the long-term tool that Dwayne mentioned, right? Was that was more acute. Let's put it that way. That something I did last week that I didn't necessarily, like I said, articulate, that didn't get me any kind of any votes, because again, I was at the bottom last week. So for whatever that's worth, that was part of the reason why I voted for myself at the top.
Fair enough reason. And Sabre, do you have a strong objection to this? Because you voted for Dwayne.
No, I don't actually. I was really stuck between them, but ultimately decided to go with Dwayne. So I actually don't have a problem with this. That's good that we could decide on exiting.
I think Dwayne's a solid vote, and I'll be honest, I typed half of his name before I changed it to extra, because Dwayne's the organizer of this call in the first place, obviously, and he does a really good job communicating, like explaining his contribution. So there's that. But extra, most improved player this week, bud, for sure. We're ready for level 5 then, if we have consensus, and we can vote the next largest contribution in. So I'll start with a header here, level 5. And let's get everybody to write the name of the person they're voting for. Does anybody need more time? Hearing none, I'll do a countdown. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, instant consensus. That was probably on the heels of our last discussion too, eh? So I guess let's vote for level 4. We'll open the chat and type in level 4 and type in the name of the person you'd like to vote for. Anybody need more time? Hearing none. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. Looking for a vote from Dwayne. See, this isn't fair because Dwayne is late to rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, I thought I pressed enter. Sorry, guys.
You know how you go like this?
Yeah.
And wait to see what the other guy does.
He's gaming the system as the organizer. He's he's
Rigged.
Really want to think about this.
Okay.
All right. So we got
So we
a
have
tie.
we have 2 for Sabre and 2 for Dwayne. I mean 2 for Jason, excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean I can speak first if it's and I think we kind of I think this is one of the things we've been talking about these last couple weeks, and I won't take a huge amount of time, but I think we've been talking about kind of how the voting criteria is very kind of non-specific, right? And again, last week when we were talking about certain things about who got what, and going back to my example earlier, Eric really thought that Dwayne, promoting
Good, and you?
promoting, the grant that he got, really raised him up, right? And so Eric wanted to, vote Dwayne level 6, right? And of course I would never do that because, fuck that guy. But excuse my language. But I guess the point, my overall point being, besides my jokes, is what is the criteria, right? How are we deciding certain aspects of this? And Jason, I think you were in the group meeting last week, right? Are you kind of adding new people to this, right? And adding new people is ultimately what the group needs, right? Is you need new engagement, you need new people, right? So, so Sabre might be able to go out and talk to other people in his community, other family members, other friends, and so forth about bringing those, the interest of them being involved, right? And does that outweigh kind of what you were describing a second ago about the infrastructure or the setup work, let's put it a different way, that Dwayne does, right? And I don't think we've really come to, and we're early on, right? We're meeting, what, 8 or 7 or whatever it is. So I don't think we've really come down to a good, like I said, criteria on how do you value those, right? Because yes, the infrastructure needs to exist, like Dwayne putting up the meeting, but at the same time, we also need to have new people. We need to continue to grow this, right? Especially like when it's early, it's easy for us to have this conversation when it's 4 of us, or 5 of us, 6 of us, or whatever it was last week, right? And talk about, well, what's more important at this step in the process, in the growth, right? So, like that's why I voted, and I'm sorry, I guess I'm conflating Jason and Dwayne here in this example, so I apologize, because I always know that Jason's going to be here, right? And he's going to have something to say, and he's going to have something to add, and like, is that consistency more valuable than having new people? And I'm Jason, or during the subway, if you guys have any thoughts on that, I mean, I can be convinced that it's better to bring in new people than just have the core. But like I said, I think we're at a point of where, like we were last week, and we've been in the last couple of weeks, is how do you value those, right? How do you make that value decision?
Well, good points. I mean, Sabre and I both voted for each other, and so it probably makes sense for Dwayne to share his reasoning next and what he thinks.
Yeah, I think Dwayne, and I'm sorry, and I said Dwayne earlier, but Jason, I meant you, like in terms of like always being there and so forth, right? So, and I think that there's a certain amount of, if people come and there's nobody here, then, and there's nobody like consistently there, then they're gonna immediately leave. They're gonna be like,
we got a lot of wrinkles to iron out here. We got to go through the process over and over and over again, iron out all the wrinkles, find out what we get caught on, stuff like that,
Right. And I guess it does kind of dovetail with Dwayne putting the meeting together and so forth, right? Is that like, if the meeting doesn't exist, there's nobody there, then new people are going to look at it and be like, well, this is a waste of time. This is some scam or some waste of time, right? But anyway, I'll turn it over to Dwayne and stop rambling.
It's a tough choice because Jason's been here for every meeting. The contributions of being a good moderator to help out the rooms and help the process is huge. So I've been in rooms when there hasn't been a good moderator and there's been awkward silence and there's been no one to go through that. So that as part of this procedure, I would say is as important as, me setting up the meeting and setting it up.
Not even close.
For Sabre,
it'll work for me.
Yeah. But and then on the other side, I just know how important I want to value brand new people that show up, because I want everyone to make sure they see that even a little bit of contributions, they're getting some respect. So I kind of try and go out of my way, and it's not probably fair. So I'll state that in the beginning. I'm always going to give that new person a little bit more up, and the person that's been here longer, I'm going because I know Jason, he's going to be here. He's a respected member. And then I'm going, how do we grow this? I think even though we realize this isn't a personal rating, it feels good not to be at the bottom, right? And it's based on contributions. We shouldn't have any feelings if it's bad or good, but I don't know how that new person's going to feel, except if I can bring him up one notch. And I just liked the sharing. It went on a little bit longer, but we had a little bit extra time. So Sabre, just for you to explain, new to Alien Worlds, like your sound bits today for a new person off of this recording are really great. I was checking into something new. I like to do my research. I think governance is important. For someone brand new taking time to come out just to try this out without any knowledge, takes a lot to make that leap. But it's tough because I also recognize that, you know, I want to recognize Jason as well because he's, you know, an important part of this team. So
You know,
I think
Dwayne,
I'll stay. I
think-
think I'll stay with my vote just in the explanation that I just gave of just going, great. I think it would change a little bit if Sabra, if you came in and said, you know what, I'm just brand new to this process. I haven't done any work with Alien Worlds, don't even know what the game is, and I haven't done anything in governance. I would have voted Jason. But just you walking through the process that you've kind of done some work and an interest in governance, I think I'd stick with my vote on that.
Yeah, and that's
Dwayne, I'm convinced. Dwayne, I'm convinced. I think those comments are very well taken. You know, and if I have an opportunity to, you know, vote Jason to the bottom, I'm absolutely going to take it every time.
about time. Thanks for that.
Just,
Well, you know, same as last week.
just out of principle, just you know, just out of pettiness, let's call it that way. But yeah, I think that your point to encourage new people, right? Which is certainly that came up last week in the group, right? Was, you know, if you say that everybody who's new, because their contribution is inherently less than what everybody else who's been in the group is, has to get, you know, is going to get voted to the bottom, then people are going to get discouraged. New people are going to get discouraged. They're going to say like, well, every time I go, or every time there's a new person, I'm at the bottom. That's unsustainable. So I would change my vote. So I think that would give us consensus between us.
Perfect. I'll put in the order here and just make sure we're right. That's awesome.
Yeah, that looks good. Yeah. So sorry, Jason. Nothing personal. You know I love you.
Well, you know, it was the same reasoning I shared last week, is that there's a difference between productivity, output, and work effort. I mean, I had a coach when I was young who said, I'd rather see you make a good decision on which shot to take rather than see you make a bad decision on what shot to take, but have it go in.
Everyone is coming back. Okay, so
Yeah, good meeting this week.
Welcome back, everybody. How was your breakout room?
mhm.
That was good.
Love the
We had a fun
conversation.
Yeah, it was great. We got a chance to do a couple of things. One is we were able to listen to Eric, and what he's doing is very interesting with his work toward getting a dissertation, sort of defining a question. And I think we could all go for round 2 and round 3 on that fun conversation, because we're learning a lot.
Yeah, by the way, most of you have that mind map link, so I'm happy to, right now I'm trying to put everything down there, and then I'm trying to pick the top ones that we could actually do. So the idea is we have these tools that are being rolled out, and I spent a lot of time with Matt Langston and others talking about how they're validating and verifying the tools and the simulation. Very cool, but those tools are just based on the tools. You know what I mean? They're evaluating the tools based on the performance of the fractally, not as applied to doing anything with them. Do the tools do what they're supposed to do? So I'm trying to say, can we pick a project that says, okay, let's do this with something that somebody will let us to do. So we can't go into IBM and say, let's do it, because they go, untried, untested, back, back. So, you know, I put in things like, you know, agricultural collective, artist collective. So I have to go, in other words, that mind map wasn't made for just me. It's made for projects people could do. But I have to go through that list and sort out what it is, and then say, what question do I need to answer? So I have to pick a very specific question. So that's the art of that.
Yeah, there's a whole field of possibilities. It could be, narrowing it down to something that is more and more targeted or thought through, more thorough in its process of elimination. There's a joke. It's what does a human do with infinite information? Make lists.
Well, my
Yeah.
list is small, but it's in the chat. So if anybody wants to add to that list,
And
feel
my joke
free.
that goes with that is until they wake up with Post-it notes stuck to their face. And then they realize maybe short-term memory and just winging things and flying through and answering, taking things off your desk in real time is actually a function you could apply.
Well, there's another issue of that. It's like if you bring people into a store and you give them the choice of 3, if you're selling jams or jellies, you give a choice of 3, try these, your sales will go up a lot. If you add 5 choices, your sales will go down. If you add 7 choices, they really go down. Because then people go, oh, wait, I need to think about this. I'm just too many choices, too much information. I'll just. So the other thing they did is
There's a great about that was written. So sorry to interrupt. There's a great piece about that about the paralysis of choice. And that choice, exactly to your point, right? Choice doesn't make things clear. It makes it worse, right? And eventually, I don't know what the number is, but there's some statistical analysis they did in that study that I was reading about how they get paralysis, right? They're just like, they get to 4 choices or whatever the number is, or 5 choices, and instead of making a choice, they do nothing, right? And just total intellectual paralysis about, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to do nothing, right? And now you've completely screwed yourself in a way if you're the retailer in your jam example, right? Because now instead of picking one thing, now they decide they're going to pick nothing. And ultimately that was the worst case scenario you could have.
Yeah,
right?
because you can compare 2 things easy. Is
And 3.
orange better than,
Yeah.
is orange better than peach? And 3 is pretty easy, but as soon as you do that, it puts you in that mode. So Jason's right, is they make lists and then they don't do anything because there's too many things on the list.
Yeah, it reminds me of 2 principles. One is the one with the omnivore's dilemma, where we have all of the food in the world to choose from. And now it's a whole nother level of evolution with food. Like there are more questions than answers as far as well, what should you eat? Since you can eat literally anything you want at any time. But the second one is the way that censorship can be applied is with either restricting information or adding so much noise or so much, too much information. Both serve as a tap that will turn off the information flow.
That's the commercial reality, or the political reality, starting with Putin, who did a conscious choice to say, I'm going to pollute the information so much that nobody knows what's real on purpose and win in a polluted information strategy. So Putin even had people promoting him and against him, putting out tons of pro and anti on purpose. just so you could know without him.
Yeah, he did that really well against gay people and gay marriage and so forth, where he had a whole campaign that would, that he was funding kind of the pro-gay marriage, movement in Russia, just to ferment, the traditional, Russian Orthodox, fundamentalists against that. That was one very cute example that he used it on. That he used that tactic towards, should I say?
Yeah, so it goes,
Yeah.
this idea is nobody's telling you the truth but me. Because if there's an environment of truth and you're trying to get something by convincing people something other, then it gets scrutinized. So if you want to lead people down a path, like, Nazi Germany, you have to start by saying lying press or fake news. That's how you have to start that. Anyway.
Yeah, on that point real quick, there's a crazy video that I think Vice did, where they kind of like put Hitler's speech in his language like right next to like Trump's language, and it was amazing how verbatim it was. And they ran like 50 different instances with like no commentary. Like they weren't like making a point, like making an overt point, let's put it that way. But even if you listen to them just side by side, the amount of similar words, like I said, verbatim, was just amazing. Because I think we all, or at least some of us, know that exists, but to see it was so crazy. Right?
And then the Russians did that on purpose. They
right, of course,
had a whole bunch of people hacking and doing pro and anti social media to go there. And why are we having this whole conversation? A lot of things. It's just this idea of what we're trying to do is create an environment to combat the ability for people to form these groups and put out that information. So it's a long discussion just to say that's one of the goals of Fractally, is to prevent that from happening. And we just kind of talked about how bad it can get, and it is that it is happening.
And Eric, and maybe everybody can chime in, but I don't think there's any way of necessarily like guaranteeing that doesn't happen, right? Because there's always going to be hijacking, there's always going to be manipulations and so forth, right? So I'm not sure that a governance structure in any architecture, if you will, can guarantee that that's not going to happen, right?
No, but what it does.
I don't think you're making an extreme. I just want to make the nuance, right? That it's very clear that some of the things are going to be, have the potential to be hijacked as well. But how can you do things like this that make it a little more difficult? Or
I would say minimize. I would say minimize. Because people could take over a Fractal. Even Dan Larimer said people can come in and take over a Fractal. It's just minimizing. One of the ways you do that is you don't get a group think. So that's the first thing that does it. Like there's a whole bunch of people that say masks don't work for pandemics, and a whole group of people that say masks do works, but the anti-mask people hang out with each other and the pro-mask people hang out with each other. So, if you're not mixing it up, the chance of you actually listening people are.
So can I dovetail that to a quick aside real quick? Did you do your first metaverse podcast with him today?
I am doing it today.
You are doing it today. Okay.
I already did a pre-interview with him on Tuesday, and it was good.
Okay. I was just curious that's still on schedule.
It is
I
on
had
schedule.
that on my calendar. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really curious to listen to it.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
One of the subtle changes in the Genesis Fractally group is that there's enough participants to go to a second round. And it's been noticed that once we get down to past the first two levels, it's kind of hard to really, like in our breakout group, there was a lot of discussions for the lower rounds. And hopefully I'm doing this justice, but they are going to change it starting this weekend, where you're picking the top two contributors, and those people go on to the next round. So it's kind of trying to take the cream of the crop and then having those people come to consensus, maybe to make better decisions. And I'll just open the floor on to Dan and Mark and Eric to maybe, add on to that. But yeah, just some subtleties on some changes on how that's going to work. Sounds pretty interesting. The consensus seems to be that, the time allocated for the meetings would allocate to that. Like there would be enough time for a second round, because your first round would be rather quick. So yeah, just an interesting difference. I'm not going to, we're really following the go fractally kind of model in our fractal. We wouldn't do that, I don't think, until we had a group size, until we had at least, 4 different breakout rooms consistently. I don't think we don't have a big enough group yet.
So Dwayne, is that basically like kind of what you Canadians have, like a ranked order kind of voting on that kind of structure, where if you voted somebody in the top 50%, and they would be in the second round? Kind of the way the Europeans do it, with some of their parliamentary elections and so forth, more than we do. Is that kind of the structure you're describing? Or am I off base here?
He's describing a structure that's born straight from the fractally kind of think group that's putting the platform together strategically. They published a paper 2 weeks ago, and we're going to implement it from first on this Sunday.
Okay, yeah, I'll need to read that. But I mean, is it analogous to like a ranked order voting structure?
You would actually be able to contribute to that effort by asking that question, because I think that's how fresh and that's how new it is. I don't think there's a direct tie to that, no. But there's an indirect tie to it, obviously, because yeah, they're trying to encode an answer to each of those good questions when it comes to the real problems.
Well, I mean, a ranked order structure is, right, everybody votes, and then if anybody gets 50% or more, then they win. And then if nobody gets 50% or more, then everybody who got more than 20 goes into another round, right? And then so you don't need, so you're basically like narrowing down, how many candidates you have, and forcing people who voted for the other candidates who didn't make it into that round to pick one of the candidates who did. But maybe I'm off base here. But I'll have to read the paper, Mark. And
that's fine. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I've never heard of that. Maybe Mike Manfredi or even Dan himself has heard of ranked order structure. If it's that popular, then I'm sure they have. But it sounds like basically the same thing, the same principle applied. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the actual arguments are for it, the way they put it into the 2.0 version. But it's a part of the larger idea of applying fractal election, like they call it, like political playoffs. They're trying to implement a political playoff function in order to support this scaling.
Sorry, before I froze there, I was agreeing with you guys. I'm glad that we're still on to this, because it's point assignment, right? I mean, I don't think that's how the structure of point assignment has been operating in Fractally yet, but the purpose is really similar in that it's supposed to assign points to bring the middle out, right? To bring the middle up, in that a really divisive person or policy might get a lot of number one placements and a lot of last placements, right? But that there could be a field in the middle that somebody, like one candidate ranks number 2 for everybody and is less divisive, then that is actually the better choice for the group. Is everybody agrees on the second choice, right? But the number 1 or contender is extremely divisive and overall gets fewer points. Yeah,
I knew a Canadian would step in and give me a little bit of clarity on this, right? Because I think that's pretty much you guys have had for quite a while, right? Unless I'm mistaken, but I was hoping one of you Canadians would step in and say something.
Oh, I was still muted. The Conservative Party does that internal to its leadership race. So the Conservative, it's not a ballot structure for the general election, right? It's a ballot structure for internal party leadership for the Conservative Party, and parties are free to do what they want to do to pick their leader.
And just to be clear, I wasn't necessarily trying to advocate for it, and I put a link to an article about it. I wasn't necessarily trying to advocate to what Mark was saying. Was that if you're going to go to that kind of two-tier, is that the two-tier kind of structure you use, or is there a better structure? Is there a different structure? How do you again even come to consensus on what the structure is? The same way that Jason and Dwayne in our conversations, and I think we had with Eric last time, is what's the criteria for ranking people in that consensus mechanism, right? So it's not just the actual voting or the consensus, it's all the decisions that have to be agreed upon in consensus to get you there, so that everybody's on the same page. And while they may be voting differently in consensus, at least there is agreement on what the criteria is, like I said, or whatever that analogous situation is, right? In a larger structure, that becomes more difficult. But anyway,
it does, and I mean the points system underscoring any rank order system is really where the fitting is made circumstantially to the structure of that rank order. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was going to say that idea of the process or agreeing on the process is a vital centerpiece to the ƒractal effort.
well, I think in certain instances, and I'll shut up after this, but just on that point, Mark, I think and what Jason and I were discussing a minute ago was, if people don't believe in the process, like we see here in the U.S. with elector deniers and other sort of approaches, then if you don't believe in the process, then the vote really doesn't matter, right? If the criteria isn't agreed upon or the process isn't agreed upon, then people voting on criteria they disagree with are just as equally as hollow as having no vote at all. I know that's somewhat of a boundary condition as extension, but there has to be a process there, and the process is the process, and you can go down the infinite loop as long as you want. But anyway, Mark, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, by definition, those participating validate the process. So I would say a no vote is a vote. I would say a disgruntled no confidence is a very clean representative of a participant. Even though we get into the
kind of the John Locke and the Rousseauian kind of tacit acceptance, social constructionism, right? Which is, if you agree to be in the society, then you are tacitly accepting to some of the constructions that come along with it. All right, and I know that Jason hates this, and Jason has told me many times that he doesn't accept tacit acceptance. But I think I'm on your side, Mark. Is that's reality, right? So
yeah,
maybe Jason can tell me more.
I think we're right where we want to be with speaking of these items. It's a matter of expression. And that is not to be confused with, say, it being a valid or invalid, knowing or not knowing, or a invalid or valid question. It's very much a part of this quote value that we're trying to capture, or convert sort of the misty analog side with the very quantitative value systems that we're standing up.
I'll say one last thing, and then I'll, like I said, shut up. I think the only issue with that necessarily is the people who were involved earlier, like we are. We have had these conversations and know what that tacit acceptance is defined as. And people who come in the future, and even like I said, even Locke and Rousseau talked about this, is that future people haven't necessarily had all these conversations. So are they as equally versed in what they're tacitly accepting to than the people who have come before them? And are you essentially, by definition, creating a hierarchy of people who have been there longer than should be more of a meritocracy about every vote being the same? But anyway, we're getting out to, some more philosophical, discussions there. But,
Yeah, I just guys, I
Yeah.
have to get off in 5 minutes too, just so you know. Got to go drive and get set up for the podcast. So
Yeah, if there's something else people would like to discuss, that sounds great. And at the same time, I'd love to continue this line of dialogue. Either way, I'll defer to the group.
Let's hear from Eric before he goes. There's scarcity now. Scarcity on Eric's time. Let's talk
absolutely,
about
let's hear it. Come on, Eric, you got 5 minutes. Let's hear it. Come on,
Go,
you're dumb.
go,
Come on.
go.
what do you want to know? I could talk for way more than 5 minutes on this.
Yeah, but then you'll be out of time. What do you think is the most important thing that you want to reiterate or add to or leave us with?
Yeah, you have one word, one sentence, or one paragraph. You choose.
To me, the most important thing is the fact of what we're doing, which is the experimentation, because all the things we discuss, we don't really know. It's all a guess, but it's going in the right place. We have the right people. It's open, honest, and transparent as far as I could tell. And to me, that's the big thing that works, because the first thing that divides it is when the flow of information. If you read the book like Crucial Conversation, it talks about failure being because the pool of shared knowledge disappears, because either people won't put knowledge in because they don't feel safe doing that, or they try and control that and make sure that only their opinion gets in there.
Yeah,
So-
filter else out.
Or when Jason starts to say, well, you know how those Canadians are, or those farmers are, so it's like, well, what has that got to do with what he said? So you try and shoot down other people by linking it to things and all these techniques to make it so, all of a sudden your point isn't supposed to count. Well, then you either fire back and it becomes this big battle for violence, or you go to silence and say, well, if you don't appreciate me, I'm going to be silent too. So the people that go to control, trying to control that information by a bunch of techniques, and that's one of them, belittling other people, and the silent people just sit back and listen. And that's when organization starts to go, because then you're not making decisions on real information anymore. You're making decisions on skewed knowledge, and that's when companies make big mistakes. I know I had a boss who just wouldn't listen to us at all. I mean, so we just stopped helping him. We just watched him walk into trouble. We wanted to help him, but why do it? He's just going to get mad at you for saying, excuse me, but and this was when I was on Navy ship, and one day I'm walking by and he calls me at his office and he goes, yeah, you're the operations officer. The captain has banned me. He's thinking about putting me ashore. So until then, you've got it. But we could have easily prevented that. We wanted to, but he was one of those information controllers.
It's so true. To reach people, it is an art, and you kind of have to let them find the circumstance in which they're ready for the lesson or whatever it is you're trying to get across. If you know you're right and you can't get through to a person, they're stuck on being wrong, you know, let them wander into it. They'll figure it out. You know, you
Well-
can't be wrong forever. You'll make mistakes that way.
The number one thing is to make it safe and to create a place like this where people can put that information in. So you have to have a place where that information gets shared, and you have to make it safe. And that's the number one thing that companies need to do, or organizations need to do, is make sure it's safe to share the information, or the information will get shared, and then you're making decisions based on limited information or even skewed information.
Mark, I know I want to say something. I want to add to that real quick. One sentence is, I also think, to your point, Eric, is having a place of where technology allows this all to be recorded and everybody can go back and look at it, right? And so this isn't opaque in, oh, we had a conversation, but nobody knew what happened in it, except for us in it. There's always this kind of transparency in saying anybody can go back and see what we all said. Anyway, Mark, go ahead.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I have to go.
Okay.
Thanks,
Hey, it was
guys.
great talking to you. Nice talking to you, Eric.
Thanks so much, Eric. Look forward to the video.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Dan had said that earlier
Yeah,
Yes.
that was really cool.
sometime too. Dan, are you still with us? Maybe just listening in. Probably driving
I think Mark said he had. I think Mark had his hand up. He wanted to say something. So
I'm
maybe-
still here, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And just listening, but
For
I
sure.
guess get going in a bit. But thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah,
No
awesome.
no time for final thoughts.
Yeah. What a fun day. But yeah, the last subject. Say just to I want to say that when you have that community, you have a community identity and you have a community goal as a unified community that's just reaching consensus. However, they're reaching consensus. To circle back and to ask what the objective is, or even what the identity of the community is, and keep revisiting them is just as important as small tools like transparency or dialogue. So if your captain wants something, and you're over here, a part of the hierarchy, it's top down for sure. Well, you got real fundamental issues if they collide with something that say, if the captain's speaking, if the captain is operating in a contradictory way that will defeat the original objective of the group. You have all these workers that are like, Emperor has no clothes. So it's like the revisiting why you're there, like say operating under that hierarchy, would be a good exercise, and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. So if you lose sight of that and say you challenge and then you disband and cut off, did you lose sight of the original objective, which was say to be a part of that community? One good example.
Yeah, they sort of led to mine because every group has its own dynamic. But I've been in a few groups where the dynamic is very clear, what they call chain of command, where you're not even supposed to talk to somebody outside of your chain of command. You're not supposed to be sharing thoughts or ideas or plans, right? You work up the line of command, and it works through you, and that's it. Wherever you are on that chain of command, you're obligated to that job description. Right. And I mean, that's a good way of assigning liability. It's very fascinating, all the nitty-gritty of the stuff, but like when there's a protest, the protest is more likely to be successful if there is no clear leadership. Because if there's a hierarchy, like everyone's in a chain of command, then, and it's known, then the chain of command gets interference and the movement falls apart. But movements that have no clear leader, they have no one to assign responsibility to, right? Like who is liable for all of it, for the whole mess, the whole protest, the whole demonstration, the thing, right? Well, everybody on the increment, right? Everybody who was present in whatever thing they did, you could like hand out loitering tickets, maybe, but you can't say one or a handful of people, you caused this mess, because there's no leader. But if there is a chain of command, we know that's a really good organizing principle in the way of like understanding liability for the trade-off in that.
Jason, I have to disagree. I have
Okay.
to. I have to disagree. I'm sorry. I think that what that chain of command creates is it creates a system of where you fail up. And having had military members of my family since the American Revolution, since my family came over on the Mayflower, it has been a consistent running joke in my family for apparently like 10 generations that everybody fails up, because it's not a meritocracy, right? You're not based on how good you are. You're based on the person above you is gone because they retired or they got shot or, you know, killed in battle or whatever it was, and the person below them, regardless of how qualified they are, moved up, right? And so while I agree that the hierarchy gives you, or that chain of command to you know, in this an example, right, gives you very clear, definitive authority over people, which is what you need, right? Because you're not going to tell that person that's below you, go out there and get shot or go out there and risk your life. If they go, well, you know, I'm really thinking that like maybe I'm not really into that, and you know, there can't be any of that bullshit, right? I mean, there has to be that sort of like blind loyalty in a way, right? But that doesn't mean that that person in every instance is the most qualified or the best person for that, right? So, and I don't think
you're locked with that. This is what Eric was upset. This is Eric's story, is that you're stuck with that. Even if the person is incompetent or foolish or emotionally volatile or unstable in any way, you're still stuck with that. That's who's making decisions for the group.
Right. I mean, watch Band of Brothers and see like David Schwimmer's character, right? Who everybody hates, and they know that he's not qualified, and you know, he's like the son of the general, and so he gets put in, and you know, every decision he makes for like 2 or 3 episodes is completely wrong, and they all get massacred. And at some point, you know, there's a quasi mutiny of where they say, listen, I'm not going to continue to follow a guy who tells me that this is the plan, but the plan fails every time, right? So I guess my point would be that ideally, and maybe this is something that, you know, ftRactal can help expose or help, you know, define, is there a middle ground, right? Of where it's not just like I said, the people in the hierarchy who have been there longer, so they know the tacit rules better. And it's also not just these kind of like, I'm better than you, or I have some sort of metric that's better than you. There's never been proven out.
There is a way to stave off the problem, and it definitely was not exercised on any of the colonialist campaigns. But
I'm joining you quickly.
But the way to do that, what they did in Alberta with the workers' obligation to refuse unsafe work. It used to be, up until about 5 years ago, the language in the law said that the worker has the right to refuse unsafe work. And if you ever work construction, especially like in Calgary and Alberta, you know that the contractor, the boss, will send someone up or on a ladder, or someone down into a tunnel, or somebody out in extreme heat, or what extreme cold, or whatever the job takes is what the foreman will instruct the worker to do, right?
Right, because he's incentivized. Because he's incentivized to get the job done. He's
but the
not,
worker is now
not incentivized
the worker
to
is
make
now
sure.
obli- the worker is now obligated to refuse unsafe work, and the worker has a domain of agency that is sort of a self-sovereign concept. And so their domain of liability extends to the edge of their skin, basically, where they're not allowed to put themselves in unsafe situations. You have to refuse work, and that the law will support you if you refuse unsafe work because you're upholding your obligation. I mean, it's only starting to work, but it is starting to work.
Yeah, so okay, can I just slide in here quickly? I suppose what we have is, at least as what I can understand, is that we have two different kind of ways of managing things. We have your Jason's version of having the hierarchy, and then extra is very, very adamant about meritocracy, or the act of things going according to merit. And then extra also mentioned that military background. I don't know if it is like this or if it's just that I read too many books, but from the books that I've read, although it is not another hierarchy, because generally hierarchy is the best way to ensure that you have efficiency. Hierarchy has a lot of effect in being able to make decisions go quicker. It's able to produce faster results in a shorter period of time. It has very high efficiency instead of having kind of meetings every time something choice needs to be made, even the smallest things. You have a sort of hierarchy where there's smaller groups, teams, which is why a lot of businesses, especially in the call center, have teams where they are team leaders and the team leaders report upwards, because it helps with producing better efficiency. However, in the things that I've read, when it comes to like military things, you also have your merit. So, although
Somebody, you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking a little bit.
Internet is a little unstable. Is it better? Is it working?
Oh no! Now it's much better. Yeah, I think maybe just getting a little closer helped. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Internet just went unstable there for a moment. So, like I was saying, in the what I can imagine, we can combine meritocracy and the sense of hierarchy in that people in the higher stations constantly have to produce what their stations are worth. So you can't just get to a certain point where you are able to make decisions, or you have a higher weight in decisions, but you don't have the merit anymore to back it up. So it's like you reach a certain point, you have all of your titles. If we're going to the military again, you have all of your badges. You get all of these badges, and they kind of give you your weight in voting, and you have a better. I don't know. It's like your vote kind of counts more now, but that's because you made it. It's not because you made it, because you made decisions on everything. And on this, you can also make that if someone does come along and you document everything about the tacit understanding and agreement. Okay, so like you have this tacit understanding, like I've mentioned earlier, of tacit, what's the word? Acceptance. If someone does come along and decide, wait, a better way for this to go, so these tacit, there's documentation, kind of like a white paper, documentation about governance rules, all of the rules that we can decide on, through the many meetings. Then if someone does come along and finds a way to revise it, then that person could have made it for that. If someone comes along and finds ways to revise different things, then they will have made it according to what they are able to bring. So it's constantly producing merit in order to reach a certain place in the hierarchy, and through that merit, you can go higher in the hierarchy and you can stay in your position. Like if I don't know where to make it, like counselors, executives. Let's say we're at a council, I think someone read something in the aliens or thing about people being, the land governance people. The top, there will be like 6 counselors or so. So those people are constantly having to produce merit in order to keep that position of council. It's not that you can be a counselor now and then for 2 months or 3 months you do nothing, or what you do and you keep messing up. If you mess up in the first week after becoming a counselor, then you can immediately lose that position because now you're not producing merit according to your station. That I think would be kind of the best way to mix and match the 2 forms of governments and also address a lot of problems, because you stick with merit. Merit is a very important thing if you want to have this way of showing like this person is worth where they are. They are producing results that shows that what they are saying is actually very important. To an extent, it's not that someone else's things aren't as important. It's just that they haven't produced the merit yet for the opinions to be like at the top and have that weight that someone has produced merit. So, and anyone can produce a reasonable merit at any point in time. After all, someone can come in and immediately maybe have been working on something, and that adds it into the ecosystem, and it has a massive impact. Immediately, they would be able to receive merit for that. Someone could choose, revise, like I said, go over white paper and find problems that could be fixed or things that could be improved on, and immediately that would be immediate merit. They don't necessarily have to have been there for 5 years, 10 years, 1 month, 3 weeks. It's just
So I think merit, yeah, go ahead.
it is. And hierarchy for efficiency. You kind of, the way I see governments is that you can't remove things that have already been around for a long time. We have hierarchy, and the reason why hierarchy has stayed is because it's something that works. Not necessarily the best in every case, but it's something that works. We have different forms of governments now that countries use because it works to an extent, although again not perfect. There's never going to be a perfect form of governance, but you can always strive to be better. And that's why a merit system works perfect, because it's always going to push people who want to get in higher positions or want to have better, or want to have a better position or have higher control, have better voice. They're going to want to always improve the system that exists. I think that's very important for, especially an emerging governments. That's why this works, because people that join want to try to improve it as much as they can. You want to generate meaning, you want to show your worth. Yeah.
Well, I'll step in. I'll make a quick comment because I totally agree, and I think that kind of what you're describing is, what is the effect that technology has, right? What are the effects and the improvements have of the process, right? So it may be, it's efficient now, and then if somebody, wherever they come from, right, whatever the hierarchy they come from, if they create something that adds more value inherently, then are they disproportionately getting the benefit for the improved efficiencies just because they came up with it versus somebody else who works equally as hard but didn't develop that technology?
Well, at that point, you see, it's not about doing the hard work. Everyone has brilliant ideas, and that's always going to be true. But if you can convey those brilliant ideas, then that means that you are worthy of I don't know. I know it sounds wrong if I put it like that, but
No, it's
when it's so
execution.
that you are able
It's
to
exactly your
implement it,
point. It's exactly your
and
point.
you're
Like
able
people have good ideas, but like executing ideas is almost more important than having good ideas.
yes, you can't just have an idea and not project it and be able to bring people and have them understand it. You have to be able to have these ideas and be able to share it, to be able to put it into place. Because I mean, someone could have the currently be thinking of the best way to transfer energy around the world, yet because they can't, I don't know, they can't find the way to give it recognition and for it to be out, it's not really, it's not helping anyone. So you could be, they could be working their hardest in some weird job, maybe even in a call center, but they have this brilliant idea that could change the world. So at the end of the day, what you can do, what you can produce is important. How you can improve things and being able to do that improvement is important. Sounds very harsh though.
Absolutely, and that's why, and that's why I said, and that's why I said, and maybe Jason and Dwayne would disagree, but maybe I think they'll probably agree. I think it comes down to execution, right? And I have a close friend of mine who's my mentor from grad school, who sold his company and got into venture capital and made insane amount of money, and his entire thesis to who they invested in was, there are no new ideas. Every idea has already been thought of before. Don't tell me you have a new idea. Tell me how you're going to execute that idea better than everybody else who's already told me that idea 10 times before. All right?
Exactly.
That was who he put his millions and millions of dollars into, right? Like, yes, I've heard of this idea. Okay, you want to do XYZ. Yeah, I know XYZ. Okay, I get it. I understand that exists. Why is it you that's going to be able to do it? And if you explain that to me, then I'll give you $10 million today. I'll write you a check right now.
Okay, so I agree with this starting premise 100%. The first question I usually ask an entrepreneur, if I'm giving them a little bit of career advice, is, what's your competitive advantage? What's your number one competitive advantage? And what's your list? What's on your list of competitive advantages, and how are you using them? Because execution is everything.
It really is.
Sorry?
That definitely is, yes.
And Jason, to that point, execution is not a 1 or a 0. It's not a binary situation, right? You may be able to execute to $100 million or $10 million or $1 billion, right? Whatever I think you can do. But is that enough execution for me to be willing to put the money in, right? So I guarantee you that if Jason, I said to you, hey, you can execute a silverback cryptocurrency, and I can explain to you how to execute that, all right? You could execute that to some scale, right?
Well, on what competitive advantage though, right? What's the differentiating factor?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So it's a competitive advantage is to a degree, right? It's to an extent, right? My competitive advantage is to $10 million in revenue, right? Or $100 million in revenue, right? So that's why you saw a lot of like the .com companies get a lot of money, because while they couldn't execute to $1 billion or $100 billion or 50 billion like Google or Facebook, they could execute enough that there was enough return for that investor to say, like, okay, you can get to 100 million or 500 million. That's enough return for me based on your competitive advantage. And so I'll give you the money, right? And then that scale continues to go up.
being able to have throughput, that's an advantage. There's a story I know of a guy who owned KFC franchises, where the KFC main innovation was the deep fryer, because they could prepare like 24 whole chickens in 20 minutes. And at the time, all their competition, they were using ovens and fryers, like pan fryers. You can't cook the whole chicken.
No, you gotta have the, you gotta have the pressure fryer. You gotta have the pressure fryer in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what this guy did, throughput was his competitive advantage. So he would send his friends to all the other restaurants at busy hours, at lunchtime and dinner time, and he would clog up their order with complex menu items, off menu items. He'd go to the place and be like, "Can I get a chicken? You know what? I'm gonna change it. I want pulled chicken, not whatever."
I want
right?
spicy. I want extra crispy. I want whatever.
He would push them all to their capacity threshold so that they didn't get in the habit of, like, actual organic customers did not establish the habit of going to those competitors. Organic actual customers got in the habit of going to KFC, where they could get a whole chicken in 5 minutes, like ready on demand. And then after a couple of years of instilling the habit through the community of getting used to going to the location physically of the KFC and getting the convenient meal, then he stopped sending his people out to his competitors to clog up what was their disadvantage, was just simple throughput. There's a whole list of advantage potentials.
Hey
That's
guys,
very coincidental. That's very coincidental. Hold on, Dwayne. Let me just give you one quick anecdote, because I knew the guy doing a business that I was running. He became a partner in ours. He ran like 80 KFCs all through the US. And I asked him at one point, why did you get out of the KFC business? It seemed would like be a very profitable thing, the franchising, all the things. He's like, because he's like, there's nobody you want to owe money to than people who cut meat for a living. And he goes, I'll get behind a month or two on my chicken payments. And he's like, literally, they would send people to my house, like meat cutters, with their knives and threaten me and my wife to pay them for the chicken that we had already sold. And he was like, that was the key, going back to meritocracy. He was like, I had the hierarchy. I owned all the companies. He's like, but they had the knives and they were used to getting rid of bodies and carcasses. And he goes, I couldn't put up with the threats from the meat industry. And he was making hundreds of, he bought another company. He worked, he invested in my company. We knew each other for decades. He and I don't talk anymore just because of a variety of reasons. But that was the key. That was the key point. Was I don't want to owe money to people who cut up bodies on a daily basis. It's like that saying in Snatch, right? That movie. You don't owe money to people who have a pig farm.
yeah.
I guess, Sabra, what were you gonna say?
Sorry, Dwayne. I didn't mean to interrupt. But it was so funny because it was the same sort of thing. Like KFC was like, "Hey, I'll be happy to own a KFC, but like I don't want to deal with the guys who own the money. I mean, who own the meat." So, sorry, Dwayne.
I'm going to take this opportunity to give out some prizes while we're still recording. So, left-hand side wheel, 1,000 trillium. Go. Oh, Eric, big winner. Big winner. Chicken dinner right there.
I'm never going to win any of these.
All right. 1 million crown, right-hand side. Oh, you almost did it. 1 million crown, man. You got it. Very nice. All right,
Awesome.
I'll send those. I'll be sending those out after the meeting here. So you'll see 1 million wax crown in your account, man. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you're now a crown millionaire. Woo!
I am a millionaire. Okay, thank you. Jeez, that was out of nowhere.
Yeah,
It was a good idea to get the prizes finished. Thank you for that, Dwayne. Good organizing.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna refill my coffee, guys. I'll be right back here.
All
I
right.
mean, I'll pick up where
we're
Eric
about out of
Hector and I like her back and forth. But Sabra, you were trying to say something too.
Unfortunately, my brain has already forgotten.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's. I'd like to take us back a step to the topic of your friend's thesis about how there are no new ideas really. Anything that we're going to do professionally, we're going to be making a remix or an alteration on the plan of an idea that has been done before in some version, or at the very least find a parallel, right? And that what we're looking for here is, what do we have that others will never get? What is about ourselves intrinsically that provides competitive advantage? What is about our location, or what is the opportunity among competitors right now where they're putting up a soft spot? Like Jeff Bezos is famous for saying, your margin is my opportunity. Right. So like we can look at the competitive field and we can evaluate where there's room for improvement and whether or not our strengths match that opportunity. It's just a really good sort of rubric to navigate.
And I think part of it was like, and he having been my mentor for years, and he hired me to work for his company and so forth, and so I know him, and so I know part of it is just a little bit of like being in it for so long that the same sort of things keep kind of bubbling up. That things in the ether, or however you want to, more in technology, like we've talked about before, Jason, right? And Sabri, I think if you join these calls, you'll hear it from us, right? Is that it's not like, oh, this isn't like, and it's not that, and I think that like it's not to say like there aren't novel ideas, like, oh my God, that's completely new, but I don't think that's the lion's share of certainly what he was hearing as a VC, right? He was hearing kind of the same sorts of things, because people are seeing the macro forces, people are seeing how technology is moving. Like if you had said there would never be a stable coin, like of course there's going to be a stable coin, right? Like I mean, in 2013.
Wait. You mean one thing is going to represent another? We're going
Can
to
you believe that? Unbelievable,
technology
right?
of communication to organize the artifacts of reality. I don't know about that, man.
I don't know. It's like almost like a derivative where you're gonna layer something on top of something, some other asset that it already exists, and create a swap or a derivative, like I said, based on what the underlying asset is. I mean, who could conceive of that?
Who could have?
Yeah, like who could ever imagine that you would do that?
Who could have ever imagined?
And what I think of, just again a quick anecdote, was I remember when I was living in Boston, I was a speaker at a very, I don't know how they picked me, but I was a speaker at a very prestigious conference. And the other person, the three of us, one of the other speakers was a guy who invented the ETF. And he was telling the story about how he thought that it was like a very obvious thing to do. Right? Like,
yeah.
And you like make it, just basically you're taking a basket of these things and you put them together, and he gave it like the ETF name to like make it sound cool, because he was about to get fired, and nobody wanted to touch it because they saw it as a derivative. They saw it as like nothing new.
It's not a whole business, just a fund. There's no cash register. There's no point of sale. There's no business, right? It's just investments.
And I think he was at State Street at the time. I think he was at State Street when he did it, and like he kept telling his bosses like, oh no, like ETFs are like gonna happen, and the reason I remember this distinctly. The reason he told me that they didn't want to go along with it was because they weren't convinced that this guy had come up with something new, and so they discounted what the opportunity was, because they were like, if somebody had actually been able to do that, they would have already done it.
I hate that argument. I think that's so fake.
It's
It's
so
like-
ridiculous.
Yes.
It's so, you know, and it's so insulting. And he was so like put off by it, right?
If it worked,
You
it'd be
know-
every. They say that about hydrogen. I was talking to a guy because I live in Alberta, right? Alberta, Calgary. It's the oil and gas capital of Canada,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of major power brokers and a lot of influential people, to say the least of it, like they are drinking the oil and gas Kool-Aid every day, and that's their filter bubble. That's the information diet that they're living on. And I come along and I tell them about hydrogen fuel, and their first line of defense sometimes is, well, if it really worked that well, it would be everywhere by now.
Yeah. Who are you?
Then I have to
Who
explain
are,
to them.
who are you? Who are you to tell us? You know what I mean?
Then I have to explain to them about the monopoly power protectionism of their own industry.
And that's kind of and so the story that he was telling was it, and I don't know if that had been true. That's just what he was telling me, right? And you know, was they said basically like kind of what you're saying with the hydrogen. If somebody had done this, they would have already done it. Like if this was a legit thing, somebody would have done it, right? And so they didn't want to put any money behind it. They didn't want to help build the technology, you know. And he was saying that, you know, maybe this analogy is to hydrogen, I don't know, but so much cheaper. It was so much more efficient. It was so much easier to trade. You could create anything you wanted around it, right? It was just like this kind of, you know, structure, this platform that you could build these things on, right? And you could do like we have now, like S&P 500 NFTs. You could have technology baskets and so forth. And, you know, it's kind of like whatever whatever they wanted to sell or whatever the sales guys and the wealth management guys could sell, like you just make that up, right? And then we take a bigger piece, you know, everybody's happy. And he told me it took him years and years to get like anybody to listen to him. And
Well, if it was a good idea, I'd be listening.
I could tell you his name.
They
but
might
I
as well
can
be saying if it was a good
guarantee
idea, I would have listened to it already.
right, but exactly. And there was anything. It was like, and it goes back to that point about, you know, and this is kind of the counterpoint to my mentor saying that like every idea has already been done. It's about execution, right? Yeah, that's true 99% of the time, let's call it, right? But every now and again, something new comes along and it's like, oh, like this has actually never been done before. And if I told you the guy's name, you have never heard of him. He made no money. He never went on to be, you know, Ray Dalio or, you know, any big hedge fund or NFT, or excuse me, EFT, you know, guru or any of those things, right? Like he got totally marginalized and everybody took his technology and made billions and hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah,
And
technique has technology, right?
yeah.
Because technology sounds like it's something material, like the shape of the instrument, right? The technology is maybe like the tightness of the drum, but technology is also the technique of the drummer, in that there are certain techniques that a person is either aware of or not aware of, that is itself an advantage to know of, potentially, and that permaculturists are into this, that it's like, it's not that you cut the grass, it's how. It's not like everybody cuts the grass, but when, right? Do you time it around the rain?
Right.
Do you time it around the moon? Do you cut it short
And you
or
put in
long?
some nice patterns. You get some nice checkered patterns in. You do this and that. So anyway, and I'll finish this story with this, which is because, like I said, I think he was at State Street at the time when he did this. Because nobody gave a shit about what he was doing, he filed the first patent on it. And then he filed the second patent on it. Then he filed the third patent on it. And so he ended up making a whole bunch of money because now he was so far ahead that by the time they caught up, the only way he could monetize it was through the IP. And in the crypto world, or, you know, let's extrapolate this a little bit, IP is not the best is not the most welcome structure as compared to the open source kind of structure that things have been built on and so forth. But as someone who owns IP in the financial services sector myself, there are certain advantages. There are certain instances where it's good to have that, you know. And there's that guy. I was just talking to. So I don't know if you guys watched my interview with Chris Rice the other day that I posted. But now there's a guy who's technically saying he is, you know, patented DeFi, which
Yeah,
I'll
where?
say,
I'll tell you one thing I know for sure about patents. They're all contested. Show me a single patent that exists anywhere in the world that is not the topic of a heated debate right now.
I have one.
About jurisdictional authorities.
I own two. I own two that you would, you know, but so you know, again, anecdotal. But what he does, and so
DeFi can't be done, and jurisdictionally, it's like you patented what, something on DeFi? Where is that enforced?
okay,
And
so
go somewhere else.
I'm gonna go off on a very, very small tangent here, and I'll try to keep it short as possible. So my father applied for several patents related to our business, to silverback cryptos and silverback debit cards and crypto debit cards and everything. And you know, Coinbase fucked us over, and a whole bunch of other problems we have, right? But we still own those patents that we have them. And so I know what the process was to get through those patents. And we've fought for other tangential patents related to that since then. So I know what that process looked like. But and then since then, you know, the guy that I'm talking to, this mentor that runs a VC firm, he also runs a patent consulting firm. So the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of patent consulting work, right? About crypto and how crypto relates to patents, and been hired by Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and everybody you can imagine. By the way, this is not public knowledge, so I didn't say any of this. But theoretically, if that has happened, I've been working on patent law for the last 5 years as a way of paying my bills. Extremely difficult, extremely nuanced. The nuance doesn't come necessarily from the patents themselves. The nuances come from the U.S. Supreme Court changing the law in 2016. So there was a case that was brought in front of the Supreme Court called Al's versus CLS about how ATM banking software got done. Supreme Court basically said in that case, you cannot patent financial products. You can't patent cryptos. You cannot patent processing. You cannot patent payment processing. And not only can you not patent them, but most of the patents that exist that Visa and MasterCard and Bank of America and Cisco own are invalid. Totally bullshit. Never going to happen. All right. So when people talk about DeFi, like in this example, right, and I can give you the guy's name if you want to look it up. So he's going around saying like, well, I have a patent application for DeFi that basically says that I own every process related to DeFi. A, non-specific, would never pass the patent examiner to begin with. And having, like I said, gone through this, I know the process. B, he's not even taking into account that the precedent set by the Supreme Court on a financial instrument, financial utility patent instrument, as it's known, is so high that he could never get it anyway. But he wants to go out and talk about how, oh, I got all these patents and blah, 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 which speaks to how he has no idea how finance patents work.
And you know, this is Sabray's point earlier, is that people make noise.
Total bullshit. But people go and, you know, even when
it's hollow.
yeah, and even when
it's totally hollow, even totally fictitious,
You just blast it on repeat, and unfortunately, law of large numbers, right? Some people buy the bullshit. And I think Sabra was getting to that in the way of substance, like substance
Versus
and
efficiency. Versus
putting
efficiency.
it
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no utility there. They're never, ever gonna get a patent for the reasons I just explained. But you know, it's called puffing, right? Legally, it's called puffing. Like I can say, I'm gonna sell you this car, Jason, and you know, my grandmother only drove it, you know, to church on Sundays and took care of it and everything, right? Like I can lie to you about, you know, legally that's called puffing, right? Like I can tell you any of those things the same way I can tell you I'm guaranteed going to get this patent. And people are giving him like literally tens of millions of dollars thinking that he's going to go after Wax and Ethereum and well, Celsius before they shit the bed, and everybody else being like, "Oh, we own the process for DeFi." Being like, dude, this is ridiculous. This is the guys who. This is like Craig Wright saying, "I own the patent to crypto."
Yeah, exactly.
Like I invented blockchain, so every blockchain that's out there, every crypto like owes me a royalty. Like, dude,
insane.
But go fuck yourself.
Obviously, he's almost as unpopular as what's his face. Shoot, it'll come back to me in a second. But the point I wanted to make is there's a term for this. There's a term similar to what you're saying. It's weaponizing a document. When people will go to the court and maybe sue somebody, or they will file a patent, or they'll file like
find an injunction.
Yeah, they'll file the paperwork, and then the headline will be allegation court pending, or getting sued, or something like that. And getting sued reads in a headline a lot like got sued, because even if the lawsuit is totally frivolous and it's just noise that people blast on repeat, like, yeah, we're taking them to court and, you know, can't wait, but you betcha, like, the court date is 2 years away and they're going to pull out 1 month before because they got nothing.
So what it's known as it's known as the claim objection. And so what you can do is anybody in the U.S. can go to the patent office and say, I you know, this patent has these 30 claims like our patents do, right? I want to file an objection to claim 23. They have to file that. They cannot deny you a claim rejection. You don't have to put up any background, you know, put any documentation. It's literally like a 1-page claim objection. And now all of a sudden you have this claim objection against your patent.
Sure. You know, like the Americans are known in Canada. Sorry, like I don't mean to own the trope this hard, but Americans are known to be very litigious.
No way. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. You know, like, and it's like you can't get this weaponization of everything outside of your psychology. In America, there's so much aggression because governance is so broken, because governance always is reduced to, not always, I shouldn't say always, because that's incorrect. Governance and group decision makings as a cultural artifact often revolve around a center of gravity, where the decision maker will just be deferred to whoever would hypothetically win the contest of force. That's sort of just like the cultural artifact of, well, we know whose decision it is ultimately because of the hypothetical contest of force. Therefore, you know, money as a force, the law as a force, whatever the contest is shaped like. And yeah, you're a bunch of pricks. You know, you can't get a deal done with you guys.
So I think you know, and I think Dwayne has something to say, because you know, maybe not, but I think to your exact point is you're absolutely right, and I think part of the reason that is because there is too much leeway given to both parties. So I went through, you know, let's see, we filed that in 2007. We got it in 2012. We went through 6 rounds with the patent examiner. It cost us about 150 grand to get one of those patents. And anybody can file a 1-page, like I said, claim objection, and they're weighed the same in the courts, right? And so I don't necessarily know it's the individuals. I think if I may suggest it, I think it's more the institutions who allow that to happen, right? Because I think in Canada and certainly in Europe, all those things would be thrown out, right? Like, hey, you went through a 5-year process, you got reviewed 12 times, it cost you 150 grand. This guy coming in saying that, like, hey, I own this, or your claim is bullshit, should be weighed against kind of like what the process you already went through was. And I don't think in the US that exists. And I think that's why you see the litigious nature that you're describing. Is
Well,
because
I agree.
anybody can say, well, I invented that 6 months before they did, and here's my claim objection. Well, like, yeah, I'm okay, but like the judge should look at that and be like, no, you didn't, or yes, you did, but even if you did, you didn't go through the process they did, right? I mean, and the US is all about due diligence, right? And due process. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of the reason of why we fall down on that, of why we correctly are viewed that way from the outside.
Well, yeah, on paper, right? It's just that the paper tiger stacks up and that it gets abused. What I'm describing here is a weaponized lawsuit. A
Yeah,
weaponized
yeah,
lawsuit with no substance. It's totally hollow. But that
absolutely.
people file the paperwork so that they can talk about their pending legal status
And
for the
raise
next,
their own money
for the next
or
2, 3, maybe
promote
5 years.
themselves, or yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then they back out of their position right before the deadline for some made up reason. But by then, it's been a long time. A lot of damage in that, right?
And you've had to put up so much money. I mean, we're still going through our patent lawsuit, our lawsuit, and we've put in. Dwayne, you were talking about this, right? About one of the cases you were dealing with, right? About how much did you want to put in, right? And so we're in the same situation of now, and honestly, I need to make the decision probably tomorrow. Is we've already thrown. So we lost 20 grand on the deal. They stole our money, and now we spent 60. We've spent another 6 grand on our lawyers. How much more money do we throw in?
Okay,
Right?
this is definitely the crux of it. This is definitely the crux of it because I've spoken with so many people who have different stories about the legal world and the legal process, and almost unanimously they all say, and the lawyers dragged this thing out for infinity for like no reason. They probably could have distilled it down to its essence a lot quicker, but the lawyers are not incentivized to do that at all. At all. It's like they get paid by the hour usually, and if you get a result based lawyer, it's almost worse. And so there's no easy solution in the very inelastic demand for strong representation and strong legal navigation generally. But at the same
And
time,
this is what Dwayne was talking
like
about. This is exactly what
look
Dwayne.
what these law
And
firms
this
do
is
to
your
ourselves.
example, right? Is about the farm equipment or whatever it was. That how far down that path do you go?
Right.
Before you just say, you know, the upside has to be 100%, right? It has to be guaranteed essentially for you to like return what you've put in,
I
and
have
there is no guarantee, and that's a false narrative to begin with, right? So how when do you say, okay, like we are, like I said, like literally I have to make the decision tomorrow, is how much more money do I throw into this? The defendant keeps telling us, no, we don't have your money, and we paid them a bunch of money, a bunch of their compensation in silver, and so we keep telling them, well, give us the silver back, and we don't have any of it. We spent all your money, and you know, um, And like I said, it's 20 grand that they took from us without doing anything, and now we spent another 5 grand in legal fees. Do I continue? Do I keep? Do I? You know, it's like the dog chasing the car, right? I mean, how far do we want to go down this path?
Well, you know that's what law firms do to each other on purpose. Is they cost each other's clients money on each other. And
so the difference is, I agree. Hold on, Jace, let me interrupt. I agree. The difference in this the nuance in this one is that the law firm is owned by my partner's brother.
Okay.
So we're not getting charged the regular kind of rate on the hours and all that kind of stuff, right?
You gotta have that. That's a competitive advantage. In-house
Right.
legal aid. Yeah.
Right. So we're getting like the sweetheart, like family deal. Like, don't worry about it. I'll put in all this time, but I'm not going to bill you, and all those sort of things, right? And even in that
dinner discussion.
Yeah, and so it's like, hey, you know, we're gonna get on the phone and like talk for 3 hours. They're not gonna bill me for 3 hours, right? We're gonna shoot the shit or whatever the case might be.
Dude, I've seen lawyers' offices charge the full hourly rate just for going 1 minute over the top of the hour. Like you're on the phone with them for 61 minutes, and they charge you 2 hours.
Oh, tell me, I can tell you all about Perkins Coie, which is the biggest VC-focused firm in San Francisco, where the partner who I hired, because he was a friend of mine, would do the same thing to me, and I'd be like, dude, I was like, I don't have any money. My point being, and I think Dwayne just resonated with Dwayne, is if it cost me that much in a sweetheart deal, like, how much does it cost Dwayne? How much does it cost everybody else who doesn't have it, right? And if we're at the point of saying, hey, you know, we lost 20 grand, now we lost another 5 in legal fees, and we don't have a whole lot of sales. Like, we're not like, you know, I mean, our company's not doing well, right? I mean, we don't got a lot of sales, a lot of revenue to generate that, right? So, and we have a huge, and we have 6 figures in debt, you know, that we need to pay off here at the end of next year. If we're in that situation, how is Dwayne, or how is everybody else?
Unaffordable, out of reach, realistically.
Getting fucked, you know.
But so. This is mostly it's definitely an apex America problem. In other countries, the legal profession is shaped way differently. It's in America, to your point, Extra, because the pattern of court decisions has been what it's been. The incentive has become very clear that maybe the biggest advantage a person can get personally is to have the very best lawyer, who is the most aggressive lawyer, who knows how to disable all of the opponents with paperwork and maneuver. But
again, that's money. That's pay to play. That's like, I'm the richest guy, so I can bankrupt you, you know, before you even get to court. You know what I mean? And like, that's not. And it's a court problem though, because in other countries where their court decisions have had a different pattern, the incentive is different, where the legal profession has fewer participants and lower prices because there's just less demand. Because lawyers can charge what they charge because people fucking need them. And I'll go ahead and swear because you know I mean it. So can I tell you one of the ultimate ironies of this?
Mm-hmm.
One of the ultimate ironies of this, and maybe this isn't as ironic as I think it is, but I certainly take it that way, is, like I mentioned earlier, my family came over in the Mayflower, you know, they were involved in the, you know, American Revolution and all that sort of stuff. There's one guy who was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who was the first Secretary of State under George Washington, the first governor of New York, the first governor of Pennsylvania. He wrote all of this precedent by himself in the Federalist Papers. One guy. I happen to be his direct descendant. My family still owns thousands of acres in Maryland because he was the first governor of Maryland. Thousands of acres in New York because he was the first governor of New York. First Supreme Court justice. He wrote all of these laws, basically like just pulled him out of his ass in the Federalist Papers and said, this is the way it works.
That I did not know though. Can you share a link? Do you have like ancestry.org or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So when I was a kid,
If that's true. I want to see the rest of your family tree. You got some interesting people in your branches.
so when I was a kid, that was the story, right? That's how my mom's family owned, half of Maryland and a quarter of New York, and so that was given to him, to be the first governor, right, and the first Secretary of State, and he negotiated the Treaty of Paris to like let the U.S. get away from the English and all that stuff, right? And so I all thought, growing up, especially in Hawaii, 3,000, 6,000 miles away, I was like, this is all fucking bullshit. Excuse my language. And then, like when my parents took me to Maryland and New York, there's actually a society set up about this guy, and they were like, oh yeah, you're definitely you're like direct descendant, like if like everybody in your family died, like you and your brother would like inherit like 5,000 acres in fucking Maryland or whatever it was. So that's why I say if I find it somewhat ironic that I rail against these sorts of laws and these sort of like fundamental legal structures, and then at the same time I gotta be like, well, he was my great grandfather, so how do I reconcile those?
That's big shoes, bud. Big shoes to fill.
Like, well, I feel like I'm really fucked, but like, really, can I really be that angry?
Well, all you gotta do.
And I'm not the only one who's fucked. Like, I'm sure he's fucked thousands, millions of other people since
All you
that
gotta
happened.
do is pull some lightning bolts from your ass, just like him, and get it on paper. Lightning in a bottle, as they call it.
Just like I was like, oh god, like wow, like really had to fuck me on this one. So,
well, I mean, there is so much more to unpack than that. But how do you feel about the big shoes to fill? Because I mean, I know that your father provided the project legacy, and the story in that had its enormity, And so you had mentioned how far back your family goes in terms of like the Mayflower, and that it's very interesting. It is. Sabri has to go. So Sabri, floor is yours. If you got to go, what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Parting thoughts?
I'll be seeing you guys. It was a great meeting. So thank you guys. I can't wait to join in on the next one.
Awesome.
Hopefully we can have
This-
this much
this-
conversation again.
And I know you're new, but this is basically like we had the ƒractal conversation, and then this is kind of the postscript where a bunch of it just kind of talk about these weird topics and all kinds of stuff. So
It's very
anyway,
interesting though.
this is just FYI, this is generally how it goes, after the real meeting. So just so you know if you want to participate or not.
Fun fact. If you click the first link on a Wikipedia page and you just keep doing that, it'll keep navigating to another Wikipedia page. And if you keep pressing the first link on every Wikipedia page that loads, that visits, eventually you'll get to philosophy. In Wikipedia, all topics lead to philosophy.
That's cool.
Center of gravity. So there's a holographic effect. Even though we're talking about nothing, it is also everything.
All philosophy.
Have a good one, Sabri.
Bye guys. Enjoy.
Thanks for joining us, man. Join us next week.
I will be. Thank you. It was fun.
It's always a good time.
I think I learned that from Dwayne. And did you